Because when Lincoln stood on that battlefield where tens of thousands of men died, what can only be presumed to have been horrific deaths, he said that they had not died in vain. They had not died in vain, but rather they had died so that a government of the people and by the people and for the people would not perish from the earth. I think it's perishing. I think we've become a government of a few of the people, by a few of the people, and for a few of the people. And if we're going to change the basic social contract between the American government and the American people, could we maybe sort of have a debate about this? Because what's happening on our watch is nothing short of the dismantling of democracy. We have shrinking civil liberties, we have expanding corporate influence, and we have domestic surveillance. Moneyed interests now wield an influence on our politics that is so disproportionate to that which is wielded by the average citizen that there's a lockout for the average American. The average American is locked out of serious political influence. More and more, the average American is locked out of serious educational opportunity. And for a while now, the average American is locked out of the kind of economic opportunity that every American should expect. And so, I, as someone who has had not only my life interest, but also my professional focus for 30 years, it's on transformation. So I understand about crisis, not only in my own life, but in my professional life. People don't usually come to me because things are going well. But I know a little bit about crisis, and I think many of us do. Crisis can turn into opportunity, but not unless you do the work necessary. And the work necessary is not just tweaking a little on the outside here and tweaking a little on the outside there. The work necessary is you have to start asking yourself some serious questions. Who am I? What do I stand on? What are my principles? Do I even really stand on them? Do I have maybe some things about myself I need to look at? Do I have my own shadows, my own character defects I have to atone for and admit and acknowledge? Do I have to make some changes in who I am? And what I have seen in an individual's life, which any of us know, is if you do that work, renewal happens. If you do that work, the universe is merciful. It supports you. New beginnings arrive. But if you do not do the work, then the negative consequences brought about by reckless or irresponsible behavior will not only continue, but will intensify. And I think the United States is in crisis. And I think those of us who do have a background in any kind of psychotherapeutic or recovery or spirituality or personal growth background are the last people who should be sitting out this process. Because we know about transformation. So if you know about transformation, you need your voice in there. You know, sometimes people say, oh, I'm so conscious. I'm conscious about food. I'm conscious about nutrition. I'm conscious about relationships. I'm conscious. You cannot be selectively conscious, ladies and gentlemen. You can't be selectively awake. I'm conscious about everything but politics because it's so unconscious. Well, if it's so unconscious, but the people who are into consciousness have not put their consciousness there, how can we complain it's so unconscious?
Yeah.
And it's only, I'll tell you, it's only an ersatz spirituality that you think would give you a pass on addressing the suffering of other sentient beings. Because when we talk about the fact that we have siphoned off major portions of the resources, the material and intellectual resources of our country, and placed them at the hands of a relatively few, what we're talking about here, why does it matter? I'll tell you why it matters. Unnecessary human suffering. That's why it matters. Just as the blood has to circulate in the body for the body to be healthy, the opportunity, educational opportunity, economic opportunity, political opportunity has to circulate in a society for the society to be healthy. Looking to the political status quo to fix this is getting increasingly ridiculous. They created it. We have a real problem here. You know, abolition didn't arise from a major political party, and women's suffrage didn't arise from a major political party. Civil rights didn't emerge from a major political party. By the way, I'll tell you where they did emerge from. Spiritual communities. Quakers gave birth to abolition, and Quakers gave birth to women's suffrage. and Martin Luther King, the preacher from Atlanta, and the Southern Christian Leadership Council gave birth to the Civil Rights Movement. So for those of us who are involved in the spiritual world, not only throughout American history have we never been separate, but we are the ones who always gave birth to the real movement. Because those who live in a strong vertical place are the ones who know how to lay it down on a horizontal axis. Because if you're the one who has the movement forward that repudiates or resists the status quo, by definition, the status quo has the money, the status quo has the institutional authority, the status quo has all of the machinery of worldly power. But those who are talking about really moving forward are grounded in something that, as Martin Luther King said, is more powerful than bullets. It's a moral force. You know, conviction is a force multiplier. So I think that if you look at, well, what gave abolitionists their really emotional and psychological and spiritual authority, and what gave women suffragettes their emotional and psychological and spiritual authority, and what gave the civil rights workers their emotional and psychological and spiritual authority, I believe it was their sense that the prevailing order was intolerable. It was morally intolerable. It is morally intolerable that in the richest nation in the world, 1 in 5 American children are living in poverty and going to bed not necessarily having been fed correctly that day. The word they use now is food insecure. They say that, but it's not funny. The reason they say that is because a lot of these obese children are actually malnourished. So hunger is not actually the right term. That's what a lot of these obese children, they keep eating because their bodies want to get nourished, but what they're eating is not nourishing food. It is morally intolerable that 1 in 5, that an African-American man, a citizen of this country, that any group has a 1 in 3 lifetime probability of incarceration. It is intolerable what we are doing to our planet. It is intolerable that we're not making the kind of adequate responses to climate change that we should be making. It is intolerable that we're not sure whether or not our food is poisoned. Well, kind of, we sort of like to know. We sort of thought maybe we could get it labeled, but they could spend millions of dollars to make sure not. So we don't know at this point what we're eating. We don't know at this point what those chemtrails are. It's like we're just becoming Stepford citizens because we don't know what to do. That of itself is intolerable. And it's intolerable that we're a permanent war machine. It's intolerable that we're spending $600 to $800 billion a year on the military, but we're not really sure because none of us really thinks that the amount we spend is necessarily totally connected to how safe we are, because after all, they're spending part of that money on things like nuclear submarines, but Al-Qaeda doesn't have a navy, so we're not so sure why. And so I think that there's something happens when you get to this point, this fierce point in your own life. When they say in AA, you get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I think sometimes that process has to happen among the citizens of the United States. This is happening, and I think this is something for all of us to look at. It's happening because we've allowed it to happen. The thief is stealing our democracy. We left the doors open and we left the windows open. And I think all of us have to look at ourselves. Our founders made it very clear. You're going to have to be real vigilant if you want to keep this. And things just got so easy for us. We weren't reminded, like Sarah was. You know, we didn't have that visceral, we lost enough generations go on, and the ones who are hungry for freedom aren't necessarily there anymore. Do you see what I'm saying? Which is one of the ironies of this mean-spiritedness we have towards immigrants, because immigrants are the ones who continue to feed us with that hunger for freedom. And we have just allowed ourselves to be lulled. We've allowed ourselves to be lulled by the pablum of popular culture. We've allowed ourselves to be lulled by the pablum of the political status quo. You know, in this race. And so all the people who are running, I don't call them my opponents, because, you know, you're deciding, those of you, well, all of you are deciding whether you live in District 33 or not. You will hopefully vote in the primary on June 3rd. That's very important. It's your responsibility as American. And you're simply deciding who to hire. You know, I'm just a candidate for the job. You're just interviewing candidates. That's how it should be. But I'll tell you this, ladies and gentlemen, as many candidates as there are only two conversations going on here. One is how best to perpetuate the system as it is, how best to do what you can around the edges with the status quo, and one is to say, what the heck is going on here? We, the people of District 33, we're from Los Angeles. We don't do the same old, same old. We don't buy into stale rhetoric. We do it the way we want to do it, the way we see it. We start new conversations. By the way, that's how the country goes within 5 years or so. That's just who we are. That's what our politics should be as much as anything else. So there will be candidates in this is where I ran. I couldn't hear it one more time. All these candidates who say to us, I'll go to Washington and fight for you. I'm not going to go to Washington and fight for you, but I'll tell you right now, I'm asking you this, why is it that a citizen in our country, just to feel reasonably guaranteed that our food won't be poisonous, that our air will be safe to breathe, that our children can get a decent education, that we can sort of have a shot, a reasonable shot at prosperity, that we can have a reasonable shot at the... Why is it that in America today should always be a fight? That's what we have to ask ourselves. Why is this kind of deep, why do we have to fight for things that at this point should be the minimum of what every American should feel if we work hard enough that we can attain? And so I think that just as we live with certain principles that we need to address to our individual lives, I think there are certain principles that we need to stand on and address to our collective life as well. And I turned 60 last year. When I turned 50, a girlfriend of mine said, oh, 50 is the age past which you don't care what other people think anymore. It was weird that she said that because it was kind of true. But something else happens at 60. It's not only that you don't care what they think, you gotta say it. You just gotta say it. It's like when you're a young woman and you're breastfeeding a child, the milk is actually the word they use, gotta express it. It needs to express itself. Something happens in a woman at a certain age, this has gotta express it. And the other thing about turning 60 is anything you've thought in your life, maybe I'll do that someday, you turn 60 and you got to start thinking like, well, I don't know. Whether you vote for me or not, I just got to say this stuff. And if you do vote for me and you send me to Washington, I will kick ass behind everything. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I would just like to commend you on everything that you said. These are things that I've been saying to my community of friends and family, and you're right. There has been a lulling to sleep, and it's going to take a little bit of work for people to wake up. But I think people like you out there saying it and doing it and leading by example is exactly what we need.
You know, thank you. I feel in this career, as I felt throughout my career, I'm not saying anything everybody I know isn't saying, I'm just saying in the microphone. For American women particularly, there's an issue here about the use of pharmaceuticals. Because, you know, psychic pain is there for a reason, just like physical pain is. Physical pain is there to tell you something's wrong and you need to fix it. So is psychic pain. And the fact that so many women have been depressed in America is like because we know something's wrong. The idea of numbing that pain, that's exactly how the system would respond. Numb it. Just numb it. We'll make billions of dollars off your numbing it.
We're 27th in the nation, then behind Romania with medicine. 1 in 4 is on, 1 in 4 people, not just women, is on depression, antidepressants. And so 1 in 4 is being numbed right now.
This is not a time in American history to be numbed.
Oh, God, no.
And by the way, I don't know, I can't speak for Sarah, but for myself, this is not a blanket condemnation of all psychotherapeutic drug use, because there are some people in serious clinical situations mentally that where it's a lifesaver, and I appreciate that. I think we're both talking about this epidemic use of antidepressants every time life's not going your way one